Chapter 8. The Targaryen Wedding. Taking a deep breath as he prepared himself, Jon couldn't help but feel completely out of place as he waited for his bride to arrive. He stood beside the officiating septon who was reciting several prayers to the audience. These included readings from their holy text, the seven-pointed star, while Jon stood waiting with the septon between the statues while the bride waited outside of the room for the ceremony to begin. Only once the prayers and readings were completed was Laena led into the room on the arm of Stannis and Placey, of her brother who was on the front row with their uncle watching the wedding take place. After the short walk down the aisle, Stannis silently presented Laena to Jon without saying a word, which was very unlike a marriage that was done under the old gods. Laena had forgone the veil that many brides might have worn in this situation. She had opted for a cream-colored gown which was elegantly decorated with colored embroidery that represented her house. "You may now cloak the bride and bring her under your protection," the septon told Jon with a nod of his head now that the couple were together and the ceremony could begin in earnest. Jon removed the initial cloak that Laena had been wearing over the top of her dress from around her shoulders, the cloak displaying the sigil of her noble house before putting a new cloak on her with the sigil of his house on it. It was still strange to think that he was of House Targaryen, that House Stark was no longer the house that he represented and called his own when he had been Ned Stark's bastard for so long. Laena's face revealed nothing of how she was feeling. She ignored the glaring from her uncle, knowing that he would never forgive her for what she did this day. "My lords, my ladies, we stand here in the sight of gods and men to witness the union of man and wife. One flesh, one heart, one soul, now and forever," the septon proclaimed to the gathering of lords and ladies from across the realm. There was no doubt that this marriage would need to be a success. There was much depending on it from Stannis' point of view, especially in regards to the Stark alliance. Robb and Rhaenyra were seated front row, the two of them holding hands as they watched the southern marriage take place that was so unlike their own. Then, taking each other's hands, Jon and Laena stood side by side as the septon proceeded to tie a ribbon in a knot around their joined hands to symbolize their union. "Let it be known that Laena of House Velaryon and Daeron of House Targaryen are one heart, one flesh, one soul. Cursed be he who would seek to tear them asunder," the septon said, tying the knot around the hands to join them together. The room was silent, not even a whisper as they watched the union be made. Corwin gritted his teeth, feeling his power slipping away from him as Laena married the Stark bastard. "In the sight of the seven, I hereby seal these two souls, binding them as one for eternity," the septon announced before he started to unravel the ribbon. The two of them remain metaphorically joined for the rest of their lives. It was then that the septon looked upon the couple, his eyes taking in that Targaryen air and his bride, seeing them for what felt like the first time. "Look upon each other and say the words," the septon instructed one another to speak their vows, leading to Jon and Laena turning to look at one another, both of them knowing that there was no backing out of this now. Father, smith, warrior, mother, maiden, crone, stranger. The couple chanted together, the vows feeling foreign on Jon's lips, knowing that he had never prayed to these gods in his life. He had been raised on the old gods. It was to them that he had sworn his vows for the Night's Watch, and it was then that he felt a closer connection than these southern gods. "I am hers, and she is mine. From this day until the end of my days," Jon recited his vows at the same time that Laena said her own. She held his hand tightly, knowing that the hard part was nearly over. "With this kiss, I pledge my love," Jon stated before kissing Laena for the very first time. The kiss was short before they turned to face the audience that applauded the couple. "I am sure Jon would be happy," Robb noted, watching the man that he still considered his brother enjoy his wedding feast. The celebration was a rather muted affair compared to the celebrations for Robb's wedding to Rhaenyra, but Stannis had spared little expense. The marriage between Jon and Laena was to be recognized, a new chapter in the Targaryen legacy that would see them become a vassal house to House Baratheon. "I'm sure they will get along well," Rhaenyra noted, standing beside her husband. She tried to ignore the anxiety she felt at being at a wedding like this that brought back memories of Edmure's wedding, her hand resting on the swell of her stomach, proof that she had moved past the pain that had been caused by the betrayal of Roose Bolton and Walder Frey diet. Laena had spent a little time in Rhaenyra's presence since the agreement that Jon would wed her. She had seemed nice enough, if not a little reserved, though Rhaenyra would not hold That against her. Rob smiled at that and rested a hand against Sanira's growing belly. There was not a moment that he didn't enjoy watching her. Motherhood seemed natural too. Her. He enjoyed watching her with their two sons. What do you think this one will be? Sanira asked, knowing that either way she did not care. She'd secured the succession with Carlon and Osric. Any further child would be a blessing for their family. After fearing that she could not get pregnant again after losing Eddard, she would love any child that she had no matter what it was or what they did with Thane. Their lives. A girl, beautiful as her mother, Rod stated with a grin. He had no idea what he was going to do if he did. He had no doubts that he would be protective of a daughter that he would love with all his heart. Although he knew that he would have to let a daughter go, he was in the middle of arranging a marriage for Sansa at this time, his time. Sister having been offered several options before they had left for River Run. It had been 3 years since her marriage to Tyrion Lannister had been annulled, the dwarf being more than helpful in that regard to the situation, but she could not hide out at it. Winter fell forever. Sansa had seemed receptive to the idea of marrying again, especially with Robb allowing her a choice in the man that she would spend her life with, although Catelyn had tried to stick her opinions on the matter into the mix. You have your heart set on such? Sanira laughed, knowing that Robb would never care how many sons she could give him, nor if she gave him daughters for the rest of their lives. Their marriage might not have been an easy one, and they had had their rough patches, but it was built on the love and support that they had for one another. I may do, Robb joked with a smile. He loved seeing Sanira so carefree, and he knew that her dreams were bothering her more than ever. He listened when she spoke of the feelings that she was flying through the air. It was not something that he expected that he could understand. He valued what her visions brought, and he tried to learn from them so that they would never face a wedding like the phrase again. Lyra, Robb stated with a fond smile. He'd thought about the name for a while, and he knew that he wanted a strong name for their first daughter, the first princess of the North. For hundreds of years, it was one that he had considered, and now felt confident bringing up to Sanira. And what if it's a boy? Sanira said, shaking her head. She was well aware that there were old tales how you could tell what the baby was going to be, but she didn't believe them. There was no telling what the child would be before they came into the world. She would find out well before Robb, since he wasn't allowed to be in the birthing chamber when the puppet child was born. Foreign, Robb stated without missing a beat. He grinned, knowing that he was prepared either way, and he was sure Carlon and Osric would love another brother even if he'd prefer a daughter. It appears you have it all sorted then, Sanira joked, shaking her head. She looked over at Jon and Laena, wishing that their marriage would be as happy as her one with Robb. Jon was going to need all the support that he could get, especially if the whispers that the Golden Company brought with them were anything to go by, and they would have to deal with the Dragon Queen sooner rather than later.